Hello and welcome to my Podblogger presentation assignment 2. Through researching podcasts, this indicated that the use of podcast applications in Australia mainly skews a younger audience, between a 25 and 44 age demographic. The increased listening to podcast audios stems from its easy accessibility, with over 700,000 podcasts now available on Apple Podcasts. The increased dispersion of podcast listening is primarily spread by word of mouth, being the number one means of user discovering new content. As a reflection of universal use, at home remains the most common location for podcast listening. The bar graph displays the recent statistical update, concluding that 33% of users' time is spent listening to audio sources from podcast applications. Through brainstorming activities, I was able to pinpoint my intention and influence the specificity of my design concept. This simultaneously informed my personas, the first being a full-time university student, Bill. Bill's motivations as listed allow him to multitask and occupy his mind while completing monotonous tasks such as traveling on public transport and completing chores. For Bill, the Podblogger application would act as a means of entertainment relating to Bill's needs for suggested podcasts based on audios he's previously listened to, as he needs an interface to be easily navigated and accessible. The second persona, Maya, is a full-time business owner and mother. Maya utilizes Podblogger applications to inform and educate her. Due to her busy schedule working full-time whilst taking care of her children's needs, Maya requires a GUI interface that engages with her needs and wants. Maya's concerns and frustrations include not being able to filter her search to find something her or her children will enjoy, without being a time-consuming search. With recognition of a universally generalized lifestyle, with the aim to create a purposeful use of time, Podblogger's integral functionality will focus on reducing user in-app navigation by increasing simplistic and minimalistic design. The conceptual focus on creating podcasts for dummies reflects the CEO's principles, with the intention to provide users with an interface that prioritizes universal accessibility and ability to engage an unspecified demographic. This simplistic design not only allows for wider usage but also takes into account time consumption and multitasking contexts, with the intention to make the world a better place. The design statement was enhanced through creating a mashup comparative activity, which took into consideration positive and appreciated social platform designs such as Depop, Facebook, and TikTok. By taking into account design features from various applications such as Netflix, TikTok, and Facebook, this engages user recognition, creating commonalities ranging from platforms. The mashup results informed my continued exploration as I focused on design components, filtering a search, and rating and reviewing. The mind map exploration of podblogging, specifically rating and reviewing and filtering searches, led me to recognize the importance of commonalities of interest between individuals. As an exploration of both components, I dissected 2 existing applications in order to inform my own exploration and experimentation with design interfaces. I compared Apple Podcasts and the Cotton On website to dissect what I experienced as positive or unhelpful affordances. Secondly, I compared Apple Podcasts to a Facebook business page in order to analyze the rating and reviewing section of the existing applications. Through this method of evaluation, I was able to distinguish my likes and dislikes through similarities and differences. Whilst conducting this experimentation, dissecting aspects of the interfaces, I read ratings and reviewings of the Apple Podcast application, which reiterated similar conclusions as I had navigated whilst familiarizing myself with the app. Through user flows, I created an instruction to guide the wireframes as well as the user testing experimentations. Within the user flows, I identified icons, symbols, and affordances necessary in order for a user to navigate the interface designs. These instructional steps informed an interpretation of hypothetical user journeys, beginning at opening the application to the completion of the task. Both wireframes displayed the intended user progression to achieve success in the components. The method of navigating the interfaces focused on situations relative to Persona 1 and 2. The first journey, applying filters to a search, relates to Bill's motivations to gain easy and quick audio podcasts while completing routine tasks. Maya's user journey relates to her time-poor lifestyle, taking into account users' reality and context, not only the user flow completion of a task. Both wireframes provide a visual stimuli related to the user flow and user journeys. The prototypes specify a visually simplistic framework for a GUI interface. Similarly to the user flow and user journey, the red arrow and box indications allow for a clear navigation through the application in order for a user to achieve the components of a task. In order to identify the usability and navigation of the wireframes in user testing, I utilize qualitative and quantitative questions to gather as much feedback for my second iteration. By gaining feedback, I was able to recognize aspects of my design that could be improved upon. For the first user test, filtering the length and genre of a podcast, the Think Aloud recording primarily identified using icons or symbols, decluttering the screen, and adding clear affordances. The second test, rating of a podcast, also identified the need to clearly establish affordances to direct user completion of a task, and including examples to provide user recognition. My analysis and evaluation was heavily influenced by the user testing and Think Aloud experimentation, as well as reflecting upon Nielsen's heuristics and Bud's heuristics to specify and reiterate my conceptual intentions. The heuristics identified areas that I could improve user experience, focusing on minimizing unnecessary complexity and cognitive load, and providing users with context, drove my second iterations. Through applying my analysis and evaluation of Prototypes 1, I focused on creating a minimalistic layout of affordances in order to engage users through personalization and ease in accessibility for Prototypes 2. I constructed this by using varying text, size, contrast, color and shading, and boxes. Considering the user testing errors made, the second iteration also included making affordances clear for user engagement, as well as utilizing icons rather than chiefly using text. In the second user testing experiment, the users were both able to complete the task in a reduced time in comparison to Prototype 1. The users each had varying prior knowledge and experience in navigating GUI interfaces. Each user decreased their time by approximately 10 seconds between each user testing experiment. In correlation with the initial concept for podbloggers, the multimodal GUI, this takes into account utilizing recognition rather than recall in order to minimize unnecessary complexity and cognitive load, with the aim to provide a simple interface for a universally diverse audience. As a solution to the underlying idea, Make the World a Better Place, the Podblogger's conceptual guide, Podcasts for Dummies, entails an application that can be applied across international use, unrestricted by age, culture, education, or access. Through my prototyping, I found that it is difficult to maintain a simplistic design whilst including each aspect I deemed important or integral. By identifying this disconnection between conceptual intention and design interface in Prototype 1, Prototype 2 reflected the design intention a lot clearer. The CEO of Podblogger's 3 guiding principles refers to the initial statistical research, from which I was able to create generalized personas, deconstruction of existing interfaces, user flows, and user journeys in order to interpret and identify intrinsic user wants and needs. Thank you for listening to my presentation. Have a good day.